Hey everyone, AstroNerdBoy here, and it is time for my 1-year return wish list. 3 years since Marvel Strike Force started, and it's been 1 year since I returned to the game. And I wanted to kind of talk about some things I wanted to see brought into the game. I'm not going to get, too salty about things. I could, obviously. There are a few things I will touch on, like with this new battle pass and stuff. But for the short term, I want to just talk about the 5 things that I want to see added to the game, and I'll actually mention, what I think the likelihood of said things being added to the game. And starting at number 1, Magik. Yes. Oh my goodness. The teenage boy in me. When I first started reading X-Men comics as a 14-year-old. Yep, I had a definite 2D crush on Magik. With the blonde hair and the Hime cut and stuff. But she didn't have the metal arm when I started reading, and she only just got the soul sword. Because I started reading right after they rescued her from, Velasco, however you pronounce his name, and out of Limbo. But this was her character on Marvel Avengers Alliance, and when she was introduced to the game, she was part of the Phoenix 5. Now, that would be cool. I know they're talking about adding cosmetics, but if you're going to do like a Phoenix 5 cosmetic for her, you'd need to give her, like a special ability here. But, I was looking at the kit here, not necessarily Magik stats over here, but like, her general kind of passive effects, I guess you could say. That, Ruler of Limbo chance when attacking or being attacked to summon a demon. That was actually kind of cool. Someone attacked her and then all of a sudden a demon would pop up. Now you got an extra person in there. So, just I don't remember what percent chance it was for that to happen. It wasn't like all the time. It was kind of a low. But still, it was kind of fun. Now, I never played this version of her. I don't think I ever unlocked it. I always had the Phoenix 5 version. But for the New Mutants version, let's just say they did that in a stepping disc. I like this ability. Chance to teleport all allies evading incoming area attack can avoid catastrophic attacks. So I kind of like that. Actually, if it was me, as part of her passive, like say if you got like a T4, the T4 would give it so that any kind of AoE attack, she had a percent chance, like say 50% chance to, teleport them all with her little stepping disc to safety. That would be amazing. And then, single target attacks. That would just be totally cool. And see, I liked her kit, like her soul sword in Marvel Avengers Alliance. It could basically go through any kind of character, avoiding avoidance and incorporeal effects, corporeal effects. I can't speak. But yeah, thanks, Nelson. But this would be cool because Vision, how annoying he is, like, oh, look at me, I just went incorporeal. I think I just said it right there. She would be able to hit him. He would never be able to go, out of corporeal. And then, when she used this ability, she would put like this interesting debuff on the enemy so that they took additional damage from Magik-based attacks. So, I mean, you imagine that, where she could, a Magik could fit in with the mutants, new mutant team, but she could also team up with like Supernatural, Doctor Strange, Wanda, stuff like that. That would just be amazing where, she's helping them do stuff. See, she had the stepping razor, where she had a 70% chance to avoid attacks, single target attacks or counter attacks And it was like always cool. So it was hard to hit her because she was always stepping through her disc and dealing. And then she was getting a charge. And then every time she got a charge, it increased her chance to summon a demon. But it also made her secondary and third and fourth abilities. Marvel Avengers Alliance had, you know, in addition to passives, basically characters could have like a ton of different attacks. But, you know, like, you know, her Unleash Hell, you know, was a big old AoE. Depending on the soul, the charge of the deal, if you didn't have charge on the character, it did Death Frost. You know, losing. Now this is evasion lowered. Stamina is not something in Marvel Strike Force, but it was something in Marvel Avengers Alliance. You know, Soulfire, if she had a charge, Soulfire did more damage. But you know, it did more damage than burning, and you couldn't put it out. Dark Void. And this took you took magic damage, which I think was increased if you had Bane on you. Yeah, so you put all these nifty little debuffs on characters, and then this one right here was like a big ultimate. I know it doesn't show much in terms of cost versus this, but this one could also, you know, ignore defense. That's what made it so nice. So, you know, the damage was less. It ignored defense. And then it had all these other little, you know, abilities. Melt armor. Now, if you remember in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, they had something similar to this. I think it was like shattered armor or something like that. I don't know. Certain characters could do it, but you know. But basically make it so that they had no defense. That was what made that attack so good. And then the stepping disc was one of those, I think it couldn't miss. And then it had a chance to put all kinds of other hits. You know, again, this would be an attack that Vision or other stealthy or hard to hit characters would not be able to dodge or anything. You know, guaranteed hit. Yeah. So, and you couldn't be counterattacked either. So, yeah, it was. And this attack also gave you soul charge too. So, it was basically her just stepping through a disc, a teleport disc, and then just dropping the bomb on somebody. So, yeah, I liked it. I'd love to see Magik in the game. Not necessarily. She doesn't have to have obviously these. I mean, they're not going to be able to copy these specific abilities, but you know, something similar would be lovely. I would I'd love it. You know, maybe this one, you know, maybe, you know, definitely, you know, we go with the basic, special, and ultimate, you know, like have her ultimate do just insane damage and maybe have it, you know, ignore defense and stuff, but have it do something similar to this. You know, I like this. I like this kit a lot. I loved Magik in the game, and I hate to say it, but as much as I'm annoyed with Scopely now, I would probably well out to get her like I did in Marvel Avengers Alliance. So that is it for that one. Now for the second thing I want in the game, and it has to do with enemies. Now, when we play, no matter what PvE node in this game, all we play is against members of what are in our roster or are potentially could be in our roster. So, you know, like for example, I may not have unlocked Doc Ock, but I could fight him, if that makes sense. So, because they'll add him to new PvE content, and they'll add all these characters to new PvE content, like Polaris, Multiple Man, Jubilee, in down the road. But unfortunately, what do we got in terms of these fights? The fights are boring because even though if you go in like the campaigns here, and let's just go in here. Well, these don't have bosses, so maybe this is not good. Let's go into Dark Dimension. I've got Dark Dimension 2 just because I've been, trying to get the icon or the avatar deal. But if you look, see, these are supposed to be boss nodes. These are supposed to be bosses of the nodes. And so when you go in here, this is supposed to be the boss, as far as as I understand it. And it's the same thing in raids. You go into raids and you see what you got going. And, there are these bosses, but they're forgettable. Why? Because, well, that's the boss, but there's two of her in the fight, because the stories of all these things is there are 50 billion multiverses, and all these 50 billion multiverses, all the good guys go evil, and all the evil guys stay evil. It's like, really? I mean, that's just tediously and boring. I mean, there's nothing of interest there. It's forgettable. It doesn't mean anything. It's just dumb. So I've always had a problem with Marvel Strike Force having a lack of variety on enemies. And so I was looking, and again, we're going to go back to Marvel Avengers Alliance, because Marvel Strike Force is actually like the Marvel Avengers Alliance is like the predecessor to Marvel Strike Force, because it was a hero collector game, somewhat different. But like when you were going through, the bosses meant something, because guess what? You weren't collecting Viper, you weren't collecting Whiplash, you weren't collecting. I believe this was not Raid. I believe this was a power armor for Hydra. You weren't collecting that. Very few of these enemy villain characters were you actually collecting. Most of them you were not. And the occasional ones you could, and that was only because like Elektra or Magneto, some of these characters had worked with the good guys. So if they'd worked with the good guys in the comics, then they were given a slot. Loki, same thing. He'd worked with the good guys, so he got, you could collect him. But you were never going to collect Abomination, I don't think. It's been a while, so I can't remember. I think they did bring in Destroyer, because technically Destroyer worked for the Asgardians. He was just being put to evil purposes. But there was the enemy bosses meant something. And you might say, well, okay, why did these guys mean something? And look at all the different varieties that we do not have. I mean, just look at this stuff. Crimson Cow, Madam Mask, Fixer, X-Ray, Hydro Man, Vector. Vector was nasty to fight against. I mean, there was just a lot of fun bosses to fight. But not only that, we also had enemies to fight. These were all you could not collect any of these minion characters. But these were all characters that you'd have to do fights against. And then the only, superhero or even villain characters that, that was superheroes, because you had a few heroes in here, Luke Cage and Colossus, was just because of Murder World. And they were robots, so it made sense that you'd have to fight them. But we don't have any kind of variety like that in Marvel Strike Force. I'd like to see more variety. Look at all the different Hydra factions that deals that you have to fight. This Raid, I don't even know who Raid is lore wise. They had more aim. Again, these are just minions, not the bosses. The Jotun, the Magia, however they're pronounced. Of course, more hand. Street Thugs, that's just a generic thing. But all these test subjects, to test, given human superpowers. That was, they were an interesting enemy to fight against. The Sentinels, oh my goodness. Can you imagine having some sort of like Dark Dimension 5? Instead of doing this whole global city, blah, blah, blah business that they've done before, why not have something that's like mutants or some other PvE content, even if it's not Dark Dimension 5, but where you have to take mutants in against and fight the Sentinels. I mean, how cool is that? I loved the Sentinels were fun to me, just from a lore perspective, from being an X-Men fan. You weren't going to collect these guys, but they all had different, unique, and varying degrees of power abilities. So, they were just insane. And then you had like these servo guards from Doom. Prison escapees. Man, I never was that jazzed about that. The mindless ones, Doctor Strange, Hellfire Club soldiers. I mean, that would be just totally cool. Bring in the Hellfire Club and have to fight against them. Demons. We were talking about Magik earlier. I don't remember which one. I think this was she was summoned in one of these two. And we'll talk about this chick right here in just a second. But, Dark Elves. This was M'Baku's faction in the comics. The White Gorillas. So, you had to fight them. The ISO SARS from the what is it? The I can't remember the name of the land now. It just escaped my. It's that like land where dinosaurs are. If you've read the comics, the whole thing of vampires, Draugr warriors. I don't know who Ultimatum is. And then, of course, we do have Ultron bots, so, that's no big deal. And technically, we can't collect them, but we can summon them, so... but yeah, I'd love to see more variety. And we were talking about, like, this chick right here, this, how do they pronounce her name? Subsinctus? I mean, this was, like, one of the most wicked things to have to fight in the game. Because she had her basic, the little demon up here would go and pop you 3 times, and then you would be envenomed, which would reduce your attack by 10%, and then you'd take 10% damage every round. And just because of the way Marvel Avengers Alliance was, yeah, just to allow you to have a second deal of poison, because envenom was basically a poison. Her second ability, she would smack you with that tail. But it was her third ability, did no damage. It was buff. You got a buff called Tempted, where you did 10% extra damage against demons. But she also gave herself a buff called Hell Hath No Fury, retaliates when scorned or attacked. So if she, let's say you're fighting her, and she slaps that buff Tempted on one of your characters, if you use your character then to attack her and you don't kill her, she would drop to her knees, split open, and this big, it may have been something like this, but with just giant eyeball thing would just like basically obliterate you. I think it would take you down like 1 hit point maybe. I don't know if it would actually wipe you off the deal, but 1 hit point, you mean you're kind of pretty much dead. I don't remember if it was AoE or not, but it was nasty, and you had to deal with her in a special way. Now, that was if you attacked her and failed on her Hell Hath No Fury. So, but if you ignored her because you didn't want to get that retaliation, if you didn't, if you knew you couldn't kill her with that character, when it was her turn, because you scorned her, she would do the same thing. So she was nasty, but it was fun to fight against her. It was fun to fight against all these guys, I mean, because they all had different, like, you know, like X-ray would put this radiation damage on you. You know, it was bad. You know, you had these big time sentinels that you had to deal with. You had Nimrods. You had different versions of Nimrod. I mean, it was just a lot of fun. Yeah, even AIM had a exoskeleton battle tank. It was basically in their power armor. But, you know, it was just, you know, yeah, you even had to fight Dormammu and Mephisto. You could never kill Mephisto, of course. And Mephisto would summon in two of these chicks anyway, automatically. As soon as he entered the battlefield, he immediately summoned them, gave him a contract. And so basically, if you got him down to where he was almost dead, he would basically kill one of them and get full health again. So, yeah, just the enemies that we fought in Marvel Avengers Alliance were so much more interesting than they are in Marvel Strike Force. I mean, Marvel Strike Force is just the same old meh over and over again. It's just the same characters over and over again. They just kind of, you know, because reasons, there's always like 88 billion of all the different characters, you know? And there's no rhyme or reason. And at least when you've got like all these, you know, minions to fight over here, see, then when you had a boss that was like a super villain or something, it made sense. And it was an actual meaningful boss fight, you know? Not to say that like some of these things were not nasty in their own ways, because a lot of them were. You had to deal with them very carefully. But anyway. But that's enough on that. I don't think this is something that Marvel Strike Force would do, because I think that Scopely, unfortunately, they go for simplistic, and it's just easier just to build a character that they can sell you and then make you fight it too. It kills two birds for the price of one, and who cares how boring it is, how mindless it is. You know, it's cheap, and you know, you suckers are gonna need to spend your money anyway, so. But I would love for it to happen. Anyway, another thing I'd like to happen, and we've kind of talked about it a bit, is like the debuffs. Now, we were already talking about like this chick has, you know, poison, which, you know, reduces attack and you get a damage over time effect, right? So that's, you know, that's pretty vicious. You know, you could have some other critter or some other deal, and they could, you know, give you burning, which, you know, you take damage every turn. Your defense is reduced. And this has always been another pet peeve of mine as well about Marvel Strike Force, because we got Pyro in the game, right? He burns people. So why the heck is Pyro putting on bleeds? It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. But if we looked at Pyro in this game, well, that's not it. Let me find it. Well, I couldn't find Pyro. He may not have been in Marvel Avengers Alliance. But like, look at Scream. Scream had all this kind of stuff that she could do. You know, she could cause bleeding. She could cause ravage, which would make you take more damage from bleeding. And bleeding actually was a devastating kind of an effect in this game, because you could not, every time you counterattacked or were summoned to attack, you know, called to attack, you took damage from bleed because you're bloody bleeding. So, you know, she could just do all kinds of stuff here. You know, and she was hard to deal with because she could put cower on you, she could put intimidate, which would reduce your attack accuracy and evasion. Cower, give you a 20% chance for attack to fail. She could give you a migraine, which would reduce attack on the next time you tried to attack. It would reduce the damage you gave. You know, she could web you, which would reduce your evasion and attacks. I mean, she was nasty. Scream in Marvel Avengers Alliance was just insane. I mean, just scary. Scream in Marvel Strike Force is, you know, it's a decent character. Not saying she's not, but she's not scary. She's not one of these characters that you'd go and go, oh, good grief, I got to deal with Scream. Oh my goodness. She was just insanely good in Marvel Avengers Alliance. So, but yeah, they just had all these different debuffs. And like I said, Marvel Strike Force, the only damage over time effect that we have is bleed. And it makes no sense. Because it's like, okay, explain to me why a character like Colossus bleeds when you steal. You know, why is Ultron bleeding? It makes no sense. You know, Luke Cage, lore-wise, should not bleed, but Scopely is going for that simplistic deal, so they just said, everything's a bleed. So when Pyro's burning you to death, you're not actually on fire, you're just bleeding, which, okay, doesn't make any sense. Makes zero sense. You know, characters that have a fiery-based attack, you should be on fire. And certain characters would take less damage because of whatever, you know, if they, you know, I would suggest that, you know, Ultron or Colossus take less damage from fire because maybe because they're steel, you know, maybe they don't burn, you know, they're not made of materials that are, you know, that combustible. I mean, they have some, but, you know, I'm just saying, I don't know that that would be a right solution or not, but they definitely should be immune to bleed. And like I was saying earlier, bleed should be a more devastating ability, debuff, to be honest. Of course, you'd have to limit the number of bleeds that could be put on a character. Otherwise, you know, you could just stack a bunch on and, you know, one go, they would all be dead, which kind of happens now, I guess, but you only get bleed when it's your actual turn. Yeah, characters in this game don't bleed when they're called out of turn or when they just do a retaliation or something. Personally, I think they should. It would definitely put an interesting twist in the game. But, you know, and then there should be ice damage, poison damage, you know, all that other fun stuff I would just love to see. So the next thing that I wanted to have in the game. Now, okay, one more thing about the debuffs. I don't think Scopely will ever do it again. They're simplistic. It doesn't matter if it makes no sense lore-wise. Bleed is just a generic damage over time effect. And, you know, we're going to freeze you to death and you're going to bleed because of that. We're going to burn you to death and you're going to bleed because of that. We're going to lightning strike you and you're going to bleed because of that. We're going to irradiate you and you're going to bleed because of that. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. It just, you know, it's just dumb. But they're not going to do it because that would actually require them to actually program more interesting debuffs into the game. And, you know, they're just not going to do that, I don't think. But I'd love to see it happen because it would make the game much, much, much more interesting. And unfortunately, interesting, even though it might get more people into the game, which would increase their revenues, they can't go out and quantify that with an immediate, oh, people will spend $50 billion on this if we had these debuffs, so it'll never happen. Anyway, number 4 on my list is global boss fights. Now, the thing I envision with a global boss fight is when you take some kind of a powerful character, whether it's in your roster or not, and the whole community has to go out and do damage to it. And it's a timed event. So you just get all the damage you can get done within the window. And there's 2 milestone reward tiers. One's a personal one and one's a global one. So on the personal one, you basically take, you know, any team you want, you go in there, and the object of the game, it's kind of like maybe a Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, kind of a raid, where you've got the single boss thing that you're trying to take down, and maybe some distraction things on the side that also do damage to you. But make it so that it's just all about doing as much damage as you can. Let's say it's a 4-day event, and you have to fight someone like Galactus, or you have to fight Mephisto or Blackheart. Blackheart was someone that was done in Marvel Avengers Alliance, and you know, he'd come in, and Thanos was another one, Curse was another one, Arcade was another one, Hybrid, this is another symbiote, Bastion, High Evolutionary, Salter. I mean, look at this. These were different. I mean, just really fun for the most part. Bosses that you had to go up against, but you know, you could go up and have Mephisto, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And then, like I said, the whole deal was like maybe you got 20 turns to do as much damage as you can, and then the boss flees, and you have a weak chance to keep it around a little bit longer, say with a stun or whatever, if you can land it, but it's going to get away. And then you can't use that team ever again, or at least for that day. Let's say it's a 4-day event, you can't use that team again for the rest of the day. So you go through your whole roster, use all your teams, you go in there, you do max damage, and then, you know, the next day all the teams are reset, blah blah blah. And you do damage up to certain loot tiers. You get milestones, kind of like, you know, what we have in, let's just say, Blitz, where you just go and you get your milestones, and once you get to, like, okay, this amount of damage gets you this milestone, this amount of damage gets you this milestone, and of course it'd be more than the milestones that we have in here. It'd be more than 20. Let's say there was like 100 or more milestones, and it's just all about the damage that you can do, all the damage you can inflict. And then you have the global tiers, or global milestones, and let's say you have fewer of those. Now, the benefit of the global ones is that you got whales and krakens who are going to go through the local milestones easily, right? Because they're whales and krakens. But in the global milestones, as long as you participated in the raid, or in the global raid, or global boss fight, or whatever you want to call it, global battle, you benefit from these krakens and uber whales going nuts in the event, because everyone gets the same global milestones, kind of like the Alliance milestone stuff that we have now in you know, our milestone tabs here. You know, you've got this Alliance one where you see how much how many points everyone get, but this is where your Alliance has gotten to in terms of the amount of damage they've done in the different fights. So it'd be the same thing, except on a global scale, and then you'd have loot that could benefit everyone from the low levels to the high levels. You know, maybe some sort of a currency that, you know, could go into a new store where lower level people could get stuff that they needed, and higher level stuff, peak characters could get stuff that they needed. And then Scopely would capitalize on this by allowing a limited number of refreshes, say with cores, but so that they could capitalize on it. But at the same time, even though they're capitalizing on it, the whales and krakens again are helping people who are free to play by their capitalization through the global milestones. So you'd have personal milestones, you get whatever loot you can get. The global milestones, everyone contributes, and then everyone gets stuff. I've always liked that. Dawn of the Dragons had this kind of a system. It was a ton of fun. Go in there, do damage. You get so much stuff as a new player from the global side. that would help you out as a character, you know, try to jump ahead. And that would be the main thing. It would help you, you know, really jump up there and help you try to start catching up, especially when the game has been out for, like Marvel Strike Force has, for 3 years. So there is that. So that's what I'd love to see. Again, I think this is something that Scopely could do. It would be interesting PvE content. You know, imagine fighting Master Mold, and then he's just popping out sentinels left and right. That would be a ton of fun. That would be a ton of fun. Or having to fight Belasco, and he's popping out demons. Although I'd rather have that be for like a Magik. Magik, I think, should be a legendary character, by the way. I think she's worth it as the ruler of Limbo and all that stuff. So, but anyway, so the final point, and we'll wrap this up because I know I've been blathering too long. I would like to see more of a gear loosening up. Right now, it's very frustrating to have the gear choke points as much as we do right now. And unfortunately, the game's solution to some of this gear stuff is Strike Pass, which, don't get me wrong, at least this one, I hate the haves versus the have-not system here. But, you know, at least there is some chance of getting like orange gear, purple gear through orbs, but it's RNG, and I don't really care for that so much. But there just needs to be more of a loosening of gear. Especially the Gear 13 stuff. The Gear 13 pieces are a massive choke point in this game, and it's really frustrating. But they keep that choke down because when you go in here, and it's like, hey, look, you know, let's say I didn't have any of these pieces. Why, look, we'll sell you these. You can wallet farm them for $15. And I'm sure they're making a boatload of money because they got such a choke point on this. But, you know, outside of this, like, this event right now where they've been generous with a lot of stuff, and the fact that, like, my alliance has been doing first-time clearers, you know, the gold shortage is massively real. There needs to be a lot more gold in the game. There needs to be less choke points. A game like this has choke points. I get that. That's not the issue to me. But, you know, there shouldn't be so much of a choke point on Gear 14 pieces. But, you know, Gear 14 is a massive choke point for me. And it shouldn't be. There's no reason for Gear 14 to be a choke point. Well, not Gear 14, sorry. Purple Gear. Purple Gear. My apologies. I'm rambling. Late. Purple Gear. There should be, you know, there's no reason that Purple Gear should be such a massive choke point. And it is, and there's a lot of I have to grind for purple gear hard. I mean, it's just insane how much I have to grind for purple gear. It's actually been a little bit easier to get some of the orange gear than it has been to get purple gear. I mean, it's disgusting. Not all orange gear, don't get me wrong. There are orange gear pieces that, you know, that I would definitely need. Like I said, the Gear 13 orange pieces are, you know, frustratingly hard to get. It's just insane. Gear, you know, the Gear 15 feels like it's easier to get than the Gear 13 unique pieces. So I you know, I don't get it. Well, I do get it. They're trying to make money, but I really do wish they would loosen up on some of that stuff, and they could do it. They just don't want to do it. So, but that's it. My top 5 things: Magik, into the game, a better variety of enemies, a better more debuffs, global battles, global raid bosses or whatever that we all have to fight and all can get loot from. That would actually, you know, you could get purple gear and orange gear and whatever else, gold and stuff out of those kind of fights. That would actually be the solution to loosening up the excessive choke points that are in the game. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening to me do a ramble. If you like the video, give me a like and a subscribe. Thanks for all the subs of late. Also, there's my anime and manga blog at anime.astronerdboy.com. Check out my roster review for the 1 year return to my 1 year return to Marvel Strike Force, as well as my orb opening video. In the meantime, have a good one, and we'll see you later.